Hello everyone, thank you for visiting my channel. Today I'll be doing a voiceover on building a PC for the very first time. This PC will consist of an Intel i9, a Gigabyte 4080, 64 gigs of RAM, 2TB NVMe hard drive, and a Gigabyte Z790 Aorus Elite AX. Please bear with me on this video, this will be a long one. This will be the complete build of my PC. Please note I'll add some comments where I've kind of made some changes post this video, but I'll do the best that I can. Here I'm installing the 64 gigs of RAM. Here, just be very careful on the slots that you put them in. If you don't use all 4 slots, there's a priority in slots that you use. This step here, I will be installing the Samsung 990 Pro hard drive. This section also, you need to take off the heatsink just by 1 screw. Please note that there is some double-sided tape that you're going to have to deal with. Make sure you take it off on both the heatsink, and I believe where it says right there where it says Gigabyte, you need to take the tape off of there too. Here you're just going to slide the hard drive like at a 45-degree angle, and then you just kind of push it down and it just kind of automatically snaps into place. At this point, you want to take the tape off of the heatsink, just kind of lay it on top of the hard drive. You're going to screw it in, and that way everything is just kind of mushed together. Now comes the installing the i9. They do come with instructions, which of course I didn't bother to open. Make sure you handle the CPU with care. There are pins that you do not want to destroy or mess up, so just kind of grab it on the side as such. And there's going to be 2 marks, a mark on the CPU, and there's going to be a mark on the motherboard. Notice the mark right there on the part that hosts the CPU. There's a lever you're going to lift up. You're going to open this latch here. As you can see, those are all the contacts that will be connected to the CPU itself. Make sure you match the arrows together when inserting it. So what's going to happen now, you're going to lay this piece down. This black part is just going to pop off. It's totally normal. Just remove that part and you don't need it anymore. I chose to use a Hyte Y60 tower for this build. If I had to do it again, I probably wouldn't. This tower, it's not really good for like really large GPUs like the 4080 and 4090. But I just made it work. There are some additional parts that I kind of added off of Amazon to kind of help put the 4080 in a position where it gets better air. Probably towards the end of the video, I'll go over those things. Just be very careful. The Y60 is the side panels are all glass. They're not plastic. Or while I'm opening the box, I wanted to explain to you guys about some thermaling with the i9, which gets very hot. I highly recommend purchasing something like this Thermalite anti-bending buckle. I highly recommend you guys to look it up on YouTube. Other folks can explain it much better than I can, but it's a really helpful tool to make sure that your thermals are much better than the standard socket that's provided on the motherboard. So here I am removing the original fans that comes with the Hyte Y60. I purchased quite a few Cooler Master fans, so my whole setup with the fans is just all Cooler Masters. I wanted to have the fans RBG and also the AIO to have the same kind of fan sequence, just for the aesthetics of the PC. So the Y60 come with standard 120 millimeter fans. Just since this is going to be a hungry beast, I want it as large as fans as possible. So I went with two 140s at the bottom, two 140s on the side, and then the AIO is just the regular 360, which are just three 120 millimeter fans. So this step here is just straightforward. You just unscrew some screws and just kind of pull the wire out. And then we will proceed to installing the 140 millimeter fans. There will be some moments of silence, of course, if it's just some basic install. I just want to have the entire install or as much as possible on the video, but I don't need to talk on every single part. Bear in mind the direction. For the bottom, I have air coming inside the PC. So as you can see that there's some lips at the bottom of the tower that allows for space to get underneath, and such that air can come from underneath and push the air inside the PC. Also, the step you want to be careful too. It's not a big deal, but trying to find the right orientations of the fans to ensure that your wires as clean as possible. Here, all the wires is towards the back, so I'm trying to face the fan such that the wires just go straight towards the back. Once you have the correct direction, just go ahead and just use the same screws. Yeah, I used the exact same screws as I took the original fans out, and just mount these fans in. So also keep in mind that this fan supports both 120 and 140 millimeter for the bottom and the sides. Well, there's actually two sides. So the motherboard that I chose, it has 3 fan systems. What I did was, so there's 3 fan systems, and then there's also a CPU fan system. So for the AIO, I connected that to the CPU fan system, and then the other 3 fan systems, the way I broke it up was, the 2 fans at the bottom was on 1 fan system. There's another 2 fans on the side, which you will see later in the video. That's like fan system 2. And then there's a 120 millimeter standalone on the side, and that's fan system 3. Here you got to be very careful, because the thing is like when you use fan connectors, these are 4 pins. One of those pins actually talks to the motherboard to tell you the fan speed, right? So say for example, the 140 millimeter fan spins at a maximum of 1400 RPM, and say the 120 spins at a maximum of say 1700 RPM. If you can't connect those 2 fan systems, whatever the plug that's connected to the wire splitter, it's only going to read one of those 2. So you're going to either read 1400 or 1700. So if you want to get more accurate description, it's better to kind of group likewise fans on the fan system. So here I'm getting really close to finalizing the bottom part. So once you got all your wiring set up and in the right position to kind of connect to the motherboard, At this point, you just snap the bottom back on. There's no screws or anything. It's just a basic, simple snap on. So on to the next step. So to take the front panel off, there's a little screw right there on the side, which I'm unscrewing. Just make sure you put those in places where you don't lose them. If this is like your first PC build, you're going to find that you're going to have to kind of debug and take these panels off on and off a lot. I did it for like days after I got the entire PC connected. Here I'm just trying to figure out what's what, just looking. So you can see that on towards the left, there is a pre-installed fan. That's the standalone 120 millimeter fan. So I replaced that with the Cooler Master 120 millimeter fan. So there I took the little screw off, and then that just the front panel, glass panel, slides off. So make sure you put the front panel somewhere safe. Like I mentioned, this is all pure glass. It's not plastic. So just be very careful. This part here is where I get started on installing the Cooler Master heatsink. So basically, you need to there's 4 screws on all 4 sides of the CPU, and that's where the heatsink kind of sit on top of. There's another part here that I wanted to discuss, and that's thermal paste. I highly recommend using the Arctic MX6 thermal paste instead of using the thermal paste that's included in your AIO kit. Once again, just YouTube it and you will get all the information that you need for it. With the Hyte Y60, you can't mount your GPU the conventional way, just on your PCIe slot. Here they have a PCIe extension that goes into your motherboard, and then basically your GPU is mounted more so vertically, I guess you can say. This goes to another modification that I had to do in order to get my GPU to get fresher. The thing is I actually contact Hyte like I mentioned, I have the 4080, and the way this is, it kind of pushed the GPU a little too far forward to the glass. I literally had like a centimeter of space between the glass and the GPU. I reached out to Hyte in regard to this, and they responded back that folks are using this easy do-it-yourself fab PCIe angle mounting kit. So I actually used it. I mean, there are some cons with this method. For example, your GPU is no longer mounted on the chassis of your tower itself. It's just mounted on this bracket here, and there are magnets at the bottom of the bracket that just kind of help sits flush at the base of your tower. Also, I had to end up cutting some of the frame itself such that I can get all my HDMI and display ports to properly fit. Back to the install. There's, I believe, like 9 screws that you need to install the motherboard onto the base of the tower. Just bear in mind, with at least for the Hyte Y60, I'm not for sure about other towers, but the very most center screw, there's actually like a little rivet that's in the riser or the spacer, and you need to kind of juggle your motherboard such that it fits in that rivet, and then once it's properly seated, then go ahead and screw everything down. At this point, make sure you remove the plastic part off of your PIC extender and insert it into the PCIe of the motherboard. ensure you unloosen the screw as well, such that the PCIe extender will fit flush and secure on the tower. Next is replacing the 120 millimeter fan with the Cooler Master 120 millimeter fan. This fan will be used as an outtake. So the two, like I mentioned before, the two fans at the bottom will be bringing air in. This fan will be bringing air out. And I believe the two 140 millimeter fans will be bringing air in. This is the only part of the build where I had to replace a 120 millimeter fan. This does not take a 140 millimeter fan. The next step is to install the side two 140 millimeter fans. These fans will be intake. They will be bringing air from the outside to the inside. At this point, wiring is getting a little messy, so just do the best that you can. I am no guru when it comes to clean wiring, but I do what I can. Here I actually used the screws from Cooler Master to install these fans. Screws were not supplied by the Hyte Y60, or maybe they were and I didn't see them, but the screws that came with the Cooler Master work just fine, so I just used those. As you can see in this step, I am getting the fan such that all the wires are going to the side where all of the majoring wire components will be. Here I'm just trying to see if I can fill a wind direction to make sure I'm inserting them the correct way. Like I mentioned, this is my first time building a PC, so sometimes you just have to dot your I's and cross your T's. Now it's time to install the AIO. For the top part of this is the filter. There's no screws or anything. You just kind of pop the lid off. The one thing with the Hyte Y60 is that there's a bracket in which you need to mesh between your radiator of the AIO and the AIO fans. So please keep that in mind. I've seen some YouTube videos where they didn't seem to be aware of that and they thought it was a design flaw, and they installed it at the very bottom, and then there's very little room between the AIO radiator and the motherboard. There are a total, I believe, of 6 screws to remove this bracket. For this build, I chose to use a Cooler Master Liquid ML360 Illusion. These are the exact same fan RGB as the other 140 and 120 millimeter fans that I used. This part here, the wires are going to get super messy here. For each fan, you have 2 wires. You have the ARGB and you have the 4-pin wire. So my goal here was to kind of get this installed on the bracket and just get it such that I only have one 4-pin wire and one ARGB pin exposed. For this setup, the fans are going to be an outtake. So basically it's going to be pulling air from the tower to the outside of the tower. Here you just kind of align the screws up and just screw them in. These are the screws that came with the Cooler Master AIO. This part was a little bit tricky because I needed to know not necessarily the direction of where the fan flows, but kind of, twisting the fans around to see which side I want the wires on, such that I can kind of make it as neat as possible. However, I went through probably 2 or 3 iterations. I took it apart a few times, but eventually I got it right. Now it's time to install the AIO. This part is very straightforward. Just put the bracket in, how you taking it out. I believe there's 4H screws. Yeah, this part is pretty straightforward. Sometimes I do think, since I have the A9, you can see that there's rooms for fans at the top. You just can't put the top, what do you call that part? The filter on if you was to do that. But if you wanted to kind of do like a 6-fan AIO, it's possible. I was thinking maybe, if I could put like some risers on to kind of for the filter at the top to kind of raise it up a little bit. So in case I wanted to do like 6 fans to see if I could keep my i9 cooler, but I don't think it's necessary because it only gets super hot when you do the Cinebench test bench. Runs around 97 degrees Celsius. But when I do render when I do render videos or play video games, I don't have any issues. It probably runs around 60 or 70 degrees Celsius so far. I mean, this computer is fairly still new, so I'm sure that there's a lot that I need to figure out. This part here, you need to install the brackets to mount the cooling head on top of the CPU. This once again is another straightforward part. Just make sure you don't forget to take that piece of tape off. And as I explained earlier in the video, this is the part where you want to use the Arctic paste and also that anti-bending plate to install on top of the CPU. You're probably, I've seen videos where some people didn't see any performances. I've seen videos where people seen up to, I don't know, like 6 to 10 degrees Celsius performance gain. For myself, using both the bracket and the Arctic, I see probably maybe a 7 degree Celsius gain. So that's pretty significant. So I highly recommend doing that. So this piece-size method, before I did the Arctic and that other anti-bend adapter, I don't really like this method. When I noticed that my core, or when I do the Cinebench, and when I noticed that my CPU was running pretty warm for my likings, I took it apart a few times, and the first time I took it apart, the paste wasn't evenly distributed throughout the entire rectangle. However, when I did the Arctic method, or when I used the Arctic paste, I highly recommend just kind of doing the scraping method, or the method where you just kind of spread the paste around evenly, and that seemed to help significantly as well. So putting the header on, once again, another straightforward part. It's going to fit like in the middle hole eventually. Here you want to try to evenly kind of distribute it. It's a little difficult, but just kind of like when you put it on, try to put it on as flat as possible. You don't want the paste to go to one side or the other, especially with the P method. And then once you start putting the screws on, you just kind of get it all, each nut or screw on flush, and then just kind of tighten one up at a time. Just, go to one, tighten it probably a quarter of a turn, tighten, and then go to the other and tighten up for a quarter of a turn. So here I'm connecting the HD audio straightforward. I believe there's only one direction to plug the audio up. I had to kind of go behind the ribbons from the PCIe card, but it wasn't nothing. I didn't have to take anything apart, luckily. So the next part is connecting the pins for your tower, which is like your reset button, like the LED light on the power button, etc. I know some towers come with them in bits and pieces. This one came as one, just kind of one plug together. I was a little confused on this part because there's so many pins to put in, but I just fitted in the one that was most likely to, seemed to fit perfectly. So you just gotta read your manual on that one there. That plug there is either, I can't remember, either the USB 2 or USB 3. Those are all straightforward, but I highly recommend. What I do was just kind of print the spec sheets out on your motherboard and just kind of mark them off, etc. This right here is the fan. So before I put it on CPU option, and then later I did it on system pump. This is for the pump itself, for the cooler. I don't think it really made a difference, but eventually I kept it on the system pump. Here is where I got the MSI 1000 watt power supply that's capable of I can't remember, I think it was called like PCIe 4 or 5, capable for your GPU. So I got that version, and it came with all the plugs that you needed for that as well. Mounting this part was pretty straightforward. The screws aligned very well. Um, there is a power supply unit that I wanted to get, but the actual plugs was flush close to the um to the side panel. That wouldn't work, so I can't. I think that was from Corsair, I believe. I don't remember, but this one worked really well. Fit perfectly. The only thing, sometimes I just wish that these company do is like these cables, like you have to go from behind the motherboard, and then you have to bend the wires. So instead of they having pre-bent wires or wires that are more conducive to wiring from behind the motherboard, that would be much better. I looked online for something like that. I didn't really see what I was looking for, so I just used the cables that they came with. So now it's time to start wiring up a lot of the power supply components. This one right here. Oh, that is, I believe, the 8-pin CPU, I believe. And I kind of got confused because I believe where it says CPU, I think that's how it goes to the motherboard, and the other one goes to the power supply. Just kind of be wary of that. Yeah, I think the one, so I think right here I have it mixed up. I can't remember, but I'm sure later in the video we'll show the details. So this right here is just 24 pin connection to the motherboard. Nothing special here. So at this point, things are getting extremely messy with the wires, but it's to be expected. Just make sure, if you're using some high power CPU, i7, i9, make sure you have the dual 8-pin CPU connections, and make sure your motherboard supports that as well. So as you can see, I should be connecting 2 of them together. Yep, so that's the 2 CPU. Because like at the top it says CPU PCIe and at the bottom it says CPU PCIe. I think they're interchangeable. I just chose the ones at the top for no particular reason. So these wires, they they're pretty, they're not very pliable, bendable, so you just kind of have to kind of force things. I'm hoping the wires don't kind of come out of their slots, but it was fine. I just kind of had to force it. So this right here is connecting the 24 pin to the power supply. So as I got further along with the wiring, I started to kind of tidy up a little bit. Not everything, because I knew that, you know, something probably wasn't going to work and I had to debug, but I didn't want to leave just one big mess at the end. So slowly but surely, I just started tying stuff down. My goal wasn't to be like the neatest when it comes to wires, because that's just not my thing. But good enough where, you know, stuff is just not too loose everywhere. So just kind of be careful. Also, you know, when it comes to zip ties, I do believe the motherboard came with some zip ties. But you know, it's just best to always have some zip ties. Just kind of get the small. You could just run to Home Depot, pick up some zip ties, or wherever your local, you know, home support store, etc. The fans and the ARGBs, those things are just pain in the butt. Before I was thinking about doing an ARGB hub or something like that, but it just seems like all the hubs are limited to like 250 LEDs, and then I kind of calculated all the LEDs with all the fans that I have, and they're like, I don't know, like 260 or 280, and I didn't want to take the risk of doing all that wiring to come to find out that the hub didn't support it, or not the hub, but the controller, I meant to say. So I just figured, I was like, you know, I'm just going to just use the ARGB on the motherboard, and I know it's not the greatest software, but I'm not looking for anything spectacular when it comes to the coloring of the ARGBs. I just wanted to look neat. So what I did was, I think for the for my motherboard, for the Z790 Aurora Elite XX, I think there's maybe um two or three ARGB connections. I want to say two. So yeah, so you just, that's just what I had to do. That's what I had. So when it comes to the 4-pin fan adapters or splitters, you got to be very careful. I had to find this out, but basically, I don't know if you can see on that one there, but so on the splitter, there's one adapter or plug that has all 4 pins, and the other one just has 3 pins. And the thing with that is that that extra pin, I guess, it helps communicate to the motherboard on the actual RPM. I don't know the absolute details, but what happened was when I got the PC together, I noticed that like I have system 1, 2, 3 fans, and I noticed that one of them wasn't showing the RPM. And then after doing some further debugging, I realized that I had like you see here, this is a 3-way splitter, and some of them I just put 2 connections on the 3-way and left one open. That one that was open was the one that should have been connected because that's the one that reads the RPM. So just make sure if you're using a splitter or any of the sort, then just make sure at least one of those fans is connected to the 4 pins such that your motherboard can read the actual RPM. And then also, since with the splitter, it only reads one fan out of the multiple fans that you use, try to group likewise fans together. So say, for example, if you have 2 fans and they run at 2 different speeds, the motherboard is going to read only the fan that is connected to that 4th pin. If the other fan is blowing at a different speed, there's no way for you to know or control it. So just kind of be aware of that. Here I'm connecting my fans together to, at the bottom, there's together system fan 1, 2, and 3. I think originally I just did 2, but after I realized the whole fan splitting situation and making sure that, my 120 millimeter fan, which runs at a different speed than the 140 millimeter fans, I just used all 3 fan systems. So the 2 at the bottom was one fan system, the 2 140 on the side was another fan system, and then the 120 at the top was its own fan system. The AIO ran on the CPU fan, so that was kind of independent. So I also decided that I wanted to do kind of a HHD hard drive. So I think I got a Barracuda like 8 TB uh, SATA hard drive. I failed to realize I ordered on Amazon, and it seems difficult to kind of find like really good HHDs these days. But this one was actually refurbished or remanufactured or however you want to call it. Um, so I was a little skeptical about it because I know sometimes those hard disks. So this part right here is just you just kind of screw the screws on the sides to kind of keep it mounted. They wasn't flush that well, so you had to kind of move it around and kind of jiggle it a little bit, or start the screw like diagonally and kind of move the screw straight to get it flush. But I eventually got it going. But yeah, so this was a refurbished hard drive, but so far so good. Hopefully I don't have any issues. The reason I wanted to do this is because with the NMVE, it's only 2 TB, and I wanted to try, do some video rendering, or I just didn't want to be very limited with space, or disk space. So I just decided, for like 100 and something bucks, just to go ahead and add this with it, or add this to the build. I do have a NAS system, which is connected to the through my Ethernet. I don't know the speed of transferring extremely large files from the NAS to my PC, so I just figured I'll just go ahead and do this HHD SATA drive. So the SATA drive connection, this is one of the most straightforward, straightforward connections. There's a SATA drive, or that's like a SATA connection cable. That actually came with the motherboard, I believe. Because when I purchased the hard drive, it didn't have any cables whatsoever. So you just kind of connect one end to that, and then there's SATA ports on your motherboard that you connect to, which we'll show in a minute. And then there's also just a pin connection to the power supply that you connect to, and then that's it. It's just when you kind of do your loader, like your Windows loader, just make sure that's disconnected so it knows to only boot from the HMVE. So I'm just connecting it here, but I wasn't necessarily connecting it to the computer itself. So now, as you guys can see, it's just a big mess in the back, but I cleaned it up a little bit. So this is pretty straightforward. Slide it into that bay, and then just screw or tighten those screws down. You're good to go. And here we have it. The GPU, the 4080. I'm not a big gamer, but I didn't want to hold back on the GPU, so I didn't want to spend $1,600 for a 4090, $1,200. Or actually, I got this on sale. So at first, I was just kind of eyeballing this GPU. It's the Gigabyte OC. It was going for 1266 on Amazon, and then as it was in my cart one day, it went down by $100, so it went down to like 1166, and I was like, "Whoa, it's time to buy it." So yeah, so I picked it up for 1166. Those are brackets, but that doesn't apply to that. I think that applies just for like kind of standard positioning of the GPU on typical towers. But since I have the Hyte, it's just a completely different animal. So make sure you take that piece of tape off. This is the part where I mentioned earlier how it fits super close to the window. And at this point of the moment, I was really unhappy because I thought that I was going to have more room than that based off the research I've done. So like I mentioned, I had to buy that easy DIY kind of angled bracket to kind of move it back or closer to the motherboard. So that worked out. That worked out okay. So this pretty much wraps everything up with the build. So of course I had my fair moment of when I power everything up, is it going to work? But it worked. So there we go. I have the BIOS. Stuff is running. And here's my final product. Yep, there we have it. Able to control the RGB lights, everything. So thank you guys for watching, and hopefully you guys learned something, or I gave some tips and tricks for this. You guys have a good day.